Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the HGP H-pattern shifter from the guys at MOZA Racing. This is an all-metal construction 7-speed shifter that looks to be a pretty good value at its price of $150. Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how it does. So, let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at this MOZA HGP H-pattern shifter. Out of the box, like just about everything else that I can remember I've gotten from MOZA Racing, this product presents as a professionally finished unit. Fit and finish are very good. The black anodization on this aluminum housing you see everywhere. No defects anywhere I can find. Yeah, it just looks good out of the box. And it had a lot of good protective foam, some molded pieces that this fits into, so I can see why it survives the journey pretty well. The weight and the heft of this, 2 pounds, 14.5 ounces, and that is with the shifter attached, or rather the knob attached. That comes out to 1,320 grams. The ball itself is 6 ounces, or 170 grams, so it's got a little bit of weight to it too, and it is a solid piece of aluminum. We'll look at that in a minute. Now the logos on here, these are all silk screened on, including the gear shift indicator on which gate you are in. This is a 7-speed shifter. Not too many cars I drive are 7-speed shifter units, but I'll see if I can find one just to drive it and see what it's like. Now this is just a normal type of H pattern you would expect. You know, you're going from 1 to 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see it's kind of making some noise here, which most H-pattern shifters that are well built are going to make some noise. There is a plastic sleeve in here that makes contact with the gates. It's not a piece of metal, so they did put some plastic in there, which is kind of nice. We'll see how that lasts though once we start hammering on it. And another feature of this is there is a detent down in the shifting mechanism itself to get to 7th gear, which is kind of strange because typically you'll find that getting over here. When you go into a reverse gear, you'll push down, and that's how you get reverse, which is, again, what you do here. And you can see how far over that is. I mean, that's a long ways from here. We'll go back over here and go into 7th. So yeah, that's a long ways. I'm going to have to see how that feels once I have this mounted securely to my rig and I'm driving it, see how that goes. Now, what this means is there's a little bit of a complication here when we're going from 6 to 7. Now, I don't know how that's going to feel or how that's going to work, again, until we have it mounted and I'm actually driving it. But going from 6 to 5, all you got to do is go straight forward, right? Because 5 is up here. So you just kind of slap it and it goes right in the 5th. It doesn't try to go over to 7th, which is a nice thing. Even if I'm leaning towards 7, I slap it over towards 7, it goes into 5. So to get it in 7th, if I want it, I'm going to have to not just kind of slap it, but I'm going to have to kind of push down and slap like that. So I've kind of done it a couple of times. That's why that worked for me. And again, it's something you can get used to. It's all about muscle memory at the end of the day when we're using shifters and just about any other analog type controller. So when you're coming back to 6, it'll pop up and go into 6. So it will go into 6 because the gates have ramps on them, as it should. You see little ramp shapes there, right? And that helps guide the shifter lever back into the gate. So you can slap this back and it's going to go into 6th every time. Well, mostly every time. We'll try that again. There we go. I took my hand off of it. That's why neutral spring is pretty tight in here, pretty stiff. You try to pull it back over there. So yeah, if you keep your hand on it, it'll go in there every time. And then from 6th to 5th, it'll go into 5th. Pretty much straight. But all you have to do is stay on top of the shifter while you're using it, not slapping it around, and it's pretty much guiding itself through the gears. But again, we'll see how that works once we're using the clutch and we're doing some heel and toe shifting and things like that. Another thing about this shifter is there is a software element in their, I think, what do they call it? Pit House. The Pit House software that MOZA uses for all their controllers. It allows a automatic blip on the downshift, which is something that some cars like the Corvettes, I've been in Corvettes, and some of the GT Mustangs like the Shelbys and things like that, and other cars that'll have that auto blip, but newer ones, not the older ones. And it's kind of a neat thing if you're in a car like that and you're racing, and it can help you out. You don't have to reach over and catch the clutch, but that's kind of part of driving an H pattern shifter for me personally. So it's something I probably wouldn't use even if I could use it. The feature is only available if you are running a set of MOZA pedals. So that's another requirement. I don't have a set of MOZA pedals at the SRG currently. I did have a set that I did a review on a while back, but I gave those away to somebody, a deserving sim racer who needed a set of pedals. I do that from time to time. So I won't be able to show that feature, but there's other reviewers that have shown that, and yeah, it seems to be working fine as long as you have their pedal set. Now the connectivity is going to be USB for your PC, or you can go into the wheelbase if you have a MOZA wheelbase, or you have their universal hub that I did a review on a while back. Still kind of, I got it kind of laying around here. And yeah, depends on what you want to use. And if you use it to the wheelbase or the hub, they get the RJ11 cable here for you. It will plug in obviously to this plug, which is a transit, and then we have USB-B over here, and they do give you a USB-B cable for that. There's the B end and the A with an integrated ferrite core. Kind of nice. It's not a clip-on, it's an integrated manufactured on unit. The shifter feels good as far as the quality. It's solid metal. So for a $150 shifter, that's pretty good, I think. And again, we'll have to see how all the features come together, but at a $150 entry price. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, it doesn't do sequential. Well, yeah, it's an H pattern. And I know there are some H patterns out there that also do sequential. And if you think you're going to need a sequential, then maybe that's what you should buy instead, right? Everybody's different. Everybody's situation is a little different. But if you want a dedicated H pattern shifter, then you would be looking at something like this, right? So those are the differences. And again, it's only $150 plus shipping. And we still have yet to get a final verdict on it. But you know, from what I can see right now, for $150, I think you're going to get your money's worth. But then again, we're going to have to thrash it a little bit and find out. Now, the flange on the bottom, we'll talk about that. I like this because it's a flange. Some shifters, or a few of the shifters I got in SRG, don't have a flange. They just got a bottom plate with holes in it. And then you got to manufacture something or fabricate something that'll fit into the holes in the bottom and then have a flange that I can attach something to. So I do like a flange sticking out. Now, some people might think aesthetically that's not good, but yeah, sometimes you got to have a mount point that's easy to use. And this is going to be easy for me on my profile cockpit to mount this. And I do appreciate that. It's the little things that matter. Now, there are some other mounting options. We have a bunch of M6 holes here, little patterns here that are supposed to be for those cockpits, what I call prefab cockpits, or even some profile cockpits that have their own plate that you can mount a shifter to that has a bunch of holes in it. So this is supposed to match up with some of those. Which ones, I don't know. I can't tell you. So if you have one of these and you bought this, hopefully something would match up for you, or you could just drill another hole in the plate that would match this pattern here. And it's a 1/4 inch thick aluminum, so it's pretty substantial. It's very stiff. I don't feel any flex in it, but again, once we have it solidly mounted, we'll be able to see more about the flex in this, if there is or isn't any. And of course, we'll be looking at the mechanism inside when we do our look inside. Anything else I want to talk about the shifter itself? The lever here. First, we'll talk about the ball. Now, the ball is, again, I said that was substantial, and it's aluminum. It's not steel. And I had to check because it definitely has weight at 6 ounces or 170 grams. It has these little grooves in it that aren't real sharp on the edges. They've been chamfered down, so it's pretty smooth. But it does give you a little bit of an extra grip feature when you're using it, the shifter itself. Now, I do prefer a ball personally on an H pattern shifter, and maybe even some sequentials. It's just more comfortable for me than the bar going up and down. But everybody's a little different. Now, some sequential shifters, I'd rather have it straight up and down if I'm just going to be slapping it back and forth. But if I'm going to be grabbing it, which typically you do in an H pattern shifter because you're not just slapping it back and forth, you're actually trying to guide it to where you want to go as far as the next gear. So this is a M12 1.5 pitch thread on this shaft. And it's 18 millimeters off the shoulder of the shaft, that little shoulder there. So you just want to make sure that whatever ball you get has this thread. You go on eBay and look at shifters or knobs for shifters, and there's going to be a lot of M12s out there, 1.5 pitch. It's just kind of a standard thing. And other ones too, But yeah, you'll find a lot like this. So if you don't like this ball, or you want to put a real steel ball on it, which I have on the H pattern shifter I use all the time, then you can do that too. So you can put whatever you want to on it if you don't like this, but I think this is a pretty good knob out of the box. Before I put that back on, we'll talk about something else. This part here of the lever shaft has a plastic sleeve on it, and that engages the gates here. And you can see we got ramps on the gate to guide it, like I said before. And this is going to keep it from being metal to metal, so hopefully it won't be chipping the anodization in there. We'll have to wait to see how that works. Now, one thing that surprised me was I didn't even know that was plastic until, and it actually you can actually spin it around a little bit, so it's not stuck. Now I've got this tight, this part of the shaft, but they put this in here, and I was wondering what this was when I first looked at it in the accessories pack. And this is a replacement sleeve. So what you do is you take this knob, or the shaft, not the knob, and you just unscrew it. Looks like that's an M6, I would say, thread on this. You know, it has its own little shoulder there. And this will come off, just like that. So if you break it, it wears out, or whatever the case may be, then you have an extra one that will slide right on, put it back together, and off you go. So that's kind of neat. That's the first time I've actually seen a replacement piece for something that's making contact with the gate on the shaft itself, offered by the manufacturer, especially just included. So anyway, I'm putting the old one back on. We'll put the lever, top part of the lever back on. All this is steel, by the way. The lever here is steel. Down inside it's steel. So I imagine it's all going to be steel inside as far as the working mechanism down here. Maybe some aluminum blocks holding some things. But again, we'll just have to wait till we get to the look inside to see how that's working. All right, so what else can we talk about here? The other stuff that comes, you get an Allen wrench. This looks to be like an M6, maybe an M5. I'm not sure what that's for. Well, I know what that's for. It's for these guys. Getcha. Yeah, there we go. That's for the bolts. 15 millimeter M6 is what you get. 4 of these, and you can see we've got a little Loctite on there to keep them from vibrating back out. We get some washers to put them on with, and they're going to fit in the flange right here, or they're going to fit in the M6 holes in the bottom, like that, if you're going to be mounting from the bottom. You also get these, and I did not see these on their website, so I was a little surprised to get them. Little rubber pieces here. And if I get the right light on it, there you go. You can see they have the indicator is what gear that you're shifting into on them. It's not white, it's just a black thing. Of course, you'll know what gear you're supposed to be going into after a while using this anyway. So they got these little notches in them here. See how those notches go in? See if we can get a focus there. There we go. And it hangs down inside of the gate edge down in here. So I'm going to take the 135 and stick it on the 135. And you see it covers the white part of it. We still got reverse and 7 there. Oops, move my finger. Well, yeah, we got 7, and then there's a reverse. What that does is supposed to quiet things down. So without it, it sounds like this. And with it, it sounds like this. So it certainly does silence it. The only concern I have about this design, and I don't know if it's a legitimate concern or not, but the only concern I really have is that these things, because they're backing up against the gate on metal there, and you're pinching it with this when you're hitting it, is it going to cut it at all back here and wear it out quick? I don't know. But it certainly does the job of keeping things quiet. But I might put these on here after I use it a while, because I'm not worried about noise in the SRG, and just see. I'm going to, hammer on them a little bit and see how they weather. And it's easy to get these back off. Just put a little heat, hair dryer or something like that, and I'm sure these peel right back off. Easy enough to get the adhesive back off, and I'm sure these are going to be replaceable, because there's going to be a limited lifespan on these. They're not going to last forever, no doubt, because you can see it's not real thick rubber there. But it's nice that they put an option in there, so now when you're slamming the gears around, if you have a significant other or you have somebody trying to study in the next room, it won't be as loud. So if I can do both of these. I'm probably going to mess up here, but yeah. Anyway. Definitely muffles the sound, huh? All right, So let's take those out, and let's get the one out that just fell down in here. And by the way, they have a boot down inside of there. So that keeps the dust and debris and things like that, your beer, things like that, when you spill it, from out of the mechanism that's internal. So I think that's about it. There's not much else to show you here as far as the closer look. Dimensions, let's see, it's 100 millimeters square. So it's 100 millimeters square here and here. And if you start on the edge from here to here, it's 100 millimeters. But again, we have this little feature here they've shaped it so it has a little V going back towards the user when you're actually using it. So you'll be facing it this way. And that kicks it out another 10 mils or so. Yeah, about 110 mils at that point. The height on it, 118 millimeters. That's from the flange touching the bottom here up to the top of this. If I put my ball back on, and this fits all the stuff fits really well. You see it spins right down. That's about, I think when I measured before, is just over 240. Yeah, about 248 as far as total on this. All right, so 248. And what else we need? Oh, yeah, it's 140 this long as far as the flange goes, the mounting flange. And just like the box up top here, it's 100 millimeters wide. So those are dimensions, you know the weight. So again, we're gonna have to wait till we get this mounted securely, which we're going to do next. I'm gonna go ahead and get this on there and get it securely fastened to my rig and get this thing up and running so we can actually see what it can do. Now for our look inside segment on this MOZA H-pattern shifter. Of course, I have everything apart. We'll start with the top gate plate. And obviously this is our gate. We have this leather boot, and it is leather. You can see the suede material here. And this is how it hangs down inside of the shifter assembly. It is attached to the shifter bar here. Show you that right here. It has a groove in it. Be careful how I handle this because it's loose. So that's where it cinches up. And it cinches up with a zip tie. So you can see the zip tie. I had to cut this to get it off. But we'll just take another and go ahead and pull this out now. It just kind of pulls out. So I'll take another zip tie and thread it back in there and then tighten it back down as part of the reassembly process. All right, so not much else to see there. How the shifter is working. First off, there's some locator pins on this plate. And on the bottom, there are some holes you can see right there where the screws go to secure this to the plate. I'm going to attempt to hold it down and show you how this works. We have for the 7th gear to reverse or going left to right, this is the spring that controls that. And we have the spring ends up here and then over here. I have a couple of wraps inside. And I'm going to push it back and forth. And you'll see this catch one of these pieces here and it moves it one way or the other, and the other one goes the other way. So I'm going to put some pressure on this so it will pop out. And you can see how that's working. And I'll catch the other one. It works that way. So that's when we're going. The shifter will actually be oriented towards us, something like this. So we would be going this way, left and right. Now, obviously, we have to shift between first and second, third, fourth, so forth and so on. So I'm going to hold this down. There's some detents in these steel plates that are on the sides here. And we'll see that in detail in a minute. That will give us the sensation of the shift. So I'm going to kind of hold it down here. You hear that? Yeah. So they're catching the detents in these plates when you do that. It's all spring-loaded ball bearings. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up now, out and up. Okay. And you can see there's some locating pins on the bottom of this plate. And they catch these plates here. You see right there, those two little indentations. Nice machining, I think you can tell here. Very well done. These are 10 millimeter thick steel plates. The rest of this is an aluminum one-piece block here that they CNC'd. We'll see more detail as we get to it. I'm going to pull one of these plates off. And you can see that here's the ball bearings that are riding in these detents on the plate. And of course, this is our pivot point that's held on by this socket head cap screw. And that fits into this bearing. I'm going to go ahead and pull this other plate off. They just pop in and out, so no big deal there. These are spring-loaded. You can actually push these in a little bit. You got a lot of tension on them, which is good, but this is why there's no adjustable tension, because it's preset at the factory what they deem to be the proper tension. I'd like to see an adjustable tension on this somehow, but I can see why they went with this design at the same time, and it depends on what you want. So we got another piece here. In fact, I think, yeah, this will actually come out. I'll show you how this works. Here we go. So this is, and again, you can see that nice machined hole in there that this slides into. A little friction fit. Of course, it's going to be held on by the plate being bolted on, or actually bolted onto the bottom and squeezing this back in. But there's our little self-contained spring ball bearing unit. Very neatly done. Put that back in. The bearings that it rides in, these are, I believe, 6900Z sealed bearings. So good quality bearings there. We have them all the way around. We have one here, and you can see there's a little spring lock ring type of ring in there, retention ring, if you will, holding the bearing and assembly together there. And we have a steel shaft here. And inside here is a magnet embedded in the shaft for position sensing purposes. This one also has a sealed bearing in it. You can see it from this side. You guys can see that. So we've got nice sealed bearings all the way around. Everything's riding in. This is the spring that takes the assembly when we actually push it down to go in reverse or seventh. You can see how that works, and you can see how the bottom extends when we do that. So yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I think this is very nicely done. Now, let's talk about how the shifts are picked up. Now, these plates, and another thing, when you take these things apart, it's very important that you pay attention to how they came apart and how they're going to go back together. Because both of these plates are made the same way. These are identically CNC'd, which is good for economy of manufacture, obviously. All of them have the detents, and both of them have this hole down here too, but this hole is occupied by a magnet, because that's where the sensor side is when we put this together and show you how the sensors work. So now we're going to take a look at the board. Very clean board. As usual, all the electronics I've ever gotten from MOZA at this point are very clean, professionally done. Of course, we have our little through-hole mount USB-B and our transit hub here. And of course, we'll have all the electronics in here to do the conversion for analog to digital for our USB. Now, the sensors are here. You can see the sensor here. That's some Hall effect sensor on this board. And this board here has two very small ones on either side. Got one, let's see if we can get a good focus here. There we go, got one over here, and we have one over there. And that's when the shifter is rocking back and forth, and this magnet is sitting here in front of the sensor. Let's see, there's the little machine part for the sensor to go in. I'll show you how that works in a second. So this is sitting in there and rotating. This is not rotating, it's stationary, it's bolted to the plate. So the actual aluminum block is rotating, and that's what our sensor is connected to. So the sensor is rotating, and I'll go ahead and quickly put this together. It goes in here like this, and there's a screw. I don't know if I can get that screw in here so it won't go crazy on us. So bear with me for a second here. And I need to get my little driver. All right, almost there. We just put one screw in for demonstration purposes. You got to have it in there so it'll lay flat and clear this plate like it's supposed to. So again, the plate is mounted statically to this plate, sitting in here like this, and our magnet is hanging down there, as you can see. There's our magnet. Let's get that out of the way. And so it's in the center position now. So obviously the magnetic force from, or the magnetic waves from this sensors are equalized right now. But if you shift this and this housing, this aluminum block rotates one way or another, like that, then we've shifted the magnet over to where one of the sensors are. So now they know that we're in that position. Same thing if we go the other way, back to the center, back to the other way, and that's how this is working. So we've got a sensor on each side for that, okay? And that's why that's set up that way. Now, we have the other sensor that goes on this. This is a little easier to explain. It won't fall apart on me. So this one actually is mounted to the side of our aluminum block here, and you can see it's kind of offset with these holes. You can see the two at the top are closer. They're not really centered on the block itself, and that's why this sensor is kind of hanging down a little bit. So when we actually put this on here and bolt it together, you can see we've got a little air gap on the bottom down there, but the sensor is located directly in front of a magnet that's located or embedded in the shaft itself. So this sensor is going to pick up the magnetic field of that magnet, and when we're shifting and moving the shifter, it's going to turn back and forth, and the sensor will be able to pick those changes up in the magnetic field and interpret those as shifts in the shifter itself. Very clean, very nicely done, I think. It seems to be heavy duty. I did bang on this pretty good. As you can see, everything is pretty much robust as you can get, I suppose, in a shifter. Especially when you consider the $150 price point. This is actually, I think, again, punching above its weight a little bit. Let's go ahead and just lay that down. So that's about it as far as what I can show you as far as how this shifter is working. The sleeves, again, you know, we got some dents in there. I was wailing on this shifter pretty well when I was using it, and you'll see that in the driving segment. You'll probably see this first though, because I always do all my driving and anything I'm going to do as far as manipulating a controller before I ever do the look inside, just in case something happens while I'm doing the look inside segment and it breaks. So anyway, you can see we got the dents in there a little bit there, but this is a replaceable item. In fact, we get one of these extra in your pack when you get your shifter. So if you should ever wear one of these out, but I don't think many people are going to be banging on the shifter like I have. I like to put a lot of force on them, kind of, you know, rough them up a little bit just to see if they're going to break. Yeah, this did not break. As you can see, pretty robust build here as far as I can see anyway. So yeah, there's our look inside. So now we'll go ahead and get on to the next segment. Here's my mounting solution for my profile rig. This is a couple of pieces of 40 series profile. You can see here and here. We have a corner bracket on each side of them, all with M8 bolts and T-nuts for hardware fasteners. And the flanges on this shifter are big enough to accept M8 bolts. So that's what I'm using here. Of course, we have our T-nuts underneath. Same thing up at the front. So as you might imagine, this is a pretty lightweight shifter, and it feels very solid. At least when I'm standing behind it and manipulating. I haven't gotten in and actually used it yet. One thing I did notice when I was using it, and I'll probably say more about that later on, was remember when I was talking about you had to push down to get to 7th gear? Well, if you're at least standing up, when I'm sitting down, it'll probably be the same thing. It doesn't take that much effort to get it over there and back to 6. Pops up, obviously, when it comes to 6. I'm actually pushing down very little to get it over in 7th. And the same thing in reverse. You don't have to push it down that much. There's not a lot of pressure. It felt like more pressure when it was on the bench. And that's why you really have to wait until you get something like this mounted solidly to really be able to tell how it feels. So we'll be talking more about that when I'm actually in and driving it. But first, we'll go ahead and pull up the Pit House software and see what our options are in there. So we're in MOZA Pit House now, and we can see we have the shifter selected over here. And we can see our shifter, and these are our options over here. First thing you'll want to do is calibrate it. And there is some pop-ups when you hover over these little exclamation marks here. Within 10 seconds, press and move the joystick back and forth and from left to right to their limits. And we're going to do that right now. You have 10 seconds to do it once you hit the button. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to hit start calibrating, and I'm going to move it back and forth, and I'm going to move it to the limits on the right and the left. Let it go. And now we finish our countdown of 10 seconds, and it says success. Now you're going to want to go in and test this, obviously. Make sure you have reverse, and then make sure you go through your gates 1 through 7, and that they're showing up as they should in the right number and in the right sequence. When I took this out of the box, it thought reverse was reverse 1 and 3, so you definitely need to calibrate it. Then we'll go over to 7th. Yeah, we got 7th gear over there. Again, when we go from 6 to 7, you do have to push it down like you have to push down over here on reverse to get it in reverse gate. But it's not that much of an effort when you're sitting in the seat and you have it mounted to a solid mount like I do. I'm not even sure if that's going to be that noticeable when I'm using it, because I'm kind of using it here, and yeah. I'm going to have to find a car that has 7 speeds to be able to test that. But yeah, I don't think it's as big of an issue as I thought it was going to be when I had it on the bench, trying to push down on it and do it at the same time, which is normal. You know, bench testing and actually testing when it's mounted somewhere and you're using it are two different things. All right, so we also have the downshift throttle blip, and we're not going to be using that. I'm not running a set of MOZA pedals, but if I was, I would turn that on and try it out. Other reviewers have already used this and it seems to work fine. So again, I never use auto blip for downshifts if I'm doing a H pattern shifter. I'm always using heel and toe because that's what I use on a car. If I was driving a track car, I would be using heel and toe. So the auto blip is in more expensive cars that I would not be driving. But again, it's a feature that's there. And if you have a set of pedals, you can use it. If you don't have a set of pedals, then you do the regular heel and toe, which I'll be doing. All right, so now what we're going to do is just go ahead and get into some games. And yeah, we'll just do some driving. We're in iRacing at Sebring and the Lotus 79. We're doing some H pattern heel and toe work here. I did not have a set of MOZA pedals to use here, so I didn't use the auto blip feature, even though I would have just tested it. I don't use stuff like that. If I'm doing heel and toe shifting, then that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to be trying to do auto blip down because any car I would drive on the track would be something I was manually doing. Anyway, the pattern on the H pattern here works pretty well. It's a little bit wider, I want to say, than the one I use every day. So it did take a little getting used to, but you know, that's just muscle memory. That's something I think any shifter that you get, you're going to have to get used to that. It felt pretty good in the detents going through the shifts, lighter than what I would like because I'm pretty hard on H pattern shifters when I use them. It doesn't matter if I'm testing or not. I just get excited, I guess, when I do this kind of driving. So I do bang on it pretty hard. And again, it survived at least the punishment I gave it for. I guess I got about 3 hours on this shifter total time. It did put some dents into the plastic sleeve that they have on the lever, that part where it actually engages the gate in the stop. So that was pretty good. It didn't split it, but there are some dents. You can see some marks. But again, they do give you an extra one in the package when you buy a shifter, so they are a consumable item apparently. Better to beat that up than the lever itself, I guess, like some shifters do. They don't have this feature. So I would like to see all shifters have something like that if for wear and tear, because we put a lot of hours in a sim, especially if you're using a shifter in a sim, it's going to put a lot of hours on it. Now, the stops felt pretty solid. I didn't feel a lot of flex in the lever, just a little bit. Obviously not as solid as my daily H pattern shifter that I use, but I certainly wasn't expecting it, especially at this price point. But yeah, it didn't feel toyish, and that was the main thing to me. I was able to find the gears and get used to it fast enough, I think, or quickly enough, that I didn't miss that many shifts after I got up to speed on it. I'd like to see more tension in it, if anything. It just didn't feel heavy enough for me, but then that's a subjective thing. Some people want less tension, some people want more. But because of my aggressive driving style with the H pattern shifter, I'd like to have more tension in it. I think there was just a little bit of flex on the stop when I was hammering on it pretty hard. That's kind of expected, like I said. The overall feel and use of this shifter is good. I don't really have too many things to complain about here except for personal preference stuff. And again, at a price point, was this $150, I think that it's meeting my expectations, maybe exceeding a little bit, especially when you do the look inside and see how this thing is built. It's built pretty well. So I think it's up to the task to be able to last for a while. If you're banging on your H pattern shifters, then this is probably going to be okay for you. Again, I just don't have a lot of complaints here. It gets the job done. For the price point, I don't think you can complain. As far as longevity or durability, again, that's just something I can't really talk to or speak to because, you know, that takes time to find that out. Overall, I think most people out there who want to use an H pattern shifter would be happy with this one. Final thoughts on the MOZA HGP shifter. Out of the box, this unit presents well with all metal construction and no defects in either the fitments or finish that I could find. It has a 7-speed gate with reverse. You have to push the lever down to access reverse or the 7th gear. There seems to be a good amount of mounting options here, consisting of an extended flange on the bottom plate that will accommodate M8 bolts, and multiple M6 threaded holes in the bottom of the same plate. I had no problem getting it mounted solidly to my profile cockpit's shifter mounting section. You must have MOZA Racing's Pit House app running on your computer to use this shifter, which means another app running in the background and consuming resources. You also use the app to calibrate the shifter, which is not that hard to do. Once I had it calibrated, I did not have to recalibrate for every use. There is a downshift blip feature available on the HGP shifter, but it only works with MOZA's own pedal sets. The HGP has a very robust looking internal assembly with 8mm thick steel pivot arms securing a single billet block of CNC machined aluminum that contains all of the lever mechanicals. The setup uses self-contained spring ball units that ride in round divots that are machined into the 8mm steel pivot arm. This simulates switching between gears. Although I like the design of this setup, I would have rather have seen some type of tensioning system incorporated here. All shifts are picked up by a Hall-type magnetic detection circuit, which should provide a long life cycle. When driving the shifter, I was able to come up to speed rather quickly, as the gate spacing was good for my taste. So it didn't take long for muscle memory to set in, and I found myself missing a shift only when my attention wandered a bit. In hand, the all-metal construction of the shifter felt solid to me when executing shifts for the most part. But I do use a heavy hand when actioning shifters, and I was able to detect just a hint of shaft flex when hitting the shifter stops during aggressive driving. Also, I would have personally liked to have had a stiffer spring setup. An adjustable tensioning system would have been nice to have here. The HGP shifter is a one-trick pony here. It does not include a sequential shifter function as some other shifters do. Something to consider if you are looking. On the other hand, it has been my experience that the combo shifter assemblies don't feel as good to me as the controllers that are focused on a single task. Overall, I think MOZA has produced a good dedicated H-pattern shifter here, and considering the $150 price point, something that would be on my list of budget shifters to take a look at. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.